Welcome to another episode of the Rebel Tribe podcast. Today's conversation, I think it's really important for anyone who has a book inside them, but maybe feels a little overwhelmed by the publishing process. I'm joined today by Mark Howard, founder of Launchpad Publishing, where he helps aspiring and first time authors do something that I know felt impossible to me and probably feels impossible to a lot of you, and that is actually finish the book and then self-publish it on Amazon KDP. Now, Mark isn't a traditional or hybrid publisher, and he's not here to sell unrealistic publishing promises. What he does specialize in is guiding authors through the writing process when they're stuck, confused, or intimidated, and then helping them use Amazon's KDP platform to publish their work the right way. So if you've ever felt called to write a book, but didn't know where to start or worried about getting taken advantage of in the publishing world, been there, done that.
Mm.
This conversation is definitely for you. So welcome, Mark. I'm so excited to have you here because yes, I have been taken advantage of, I think, in the past, and I want to prevent that for anybody else.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite and looking forward to the conversation today and hopefully helping as many people as we can through this conversation.
Well, let's just get right into it. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your journey? What led you to start Launchpad Publishing? I mean, it's not, everybody wakes up and thinks someday they might like to start a business, but very few people I know got up this morning and said, I think I'll start a publishing company.
Valid. So back in November of 2011, I published my first children's book, and I did it because it started off as a bedtime story for my children, and it progressed into a little story that we made up, including my kids' names and their characters. So, but once I did that, I had a lot of people coming up and asking, "Well, how'd you do that? We have a story, or we have a children's book that we want to share." And so I started doing classes, and that was again back in early 2012. Started doing classes on how to write and self-publish, and so 13 years. Wow, I just realized it's been 13 years. Time flies. Look down at the calendar and seeing that. Um, so by doing that, I was able to help walk people through this simple process. Then, after I started doing these classes for several years, I would run across some of the people that had been in class, and they'd say, "Hey," I'd ask them, "Hey, how's that book coming along? Have you got it done yet?" And they would show some hesitation, like, well, they'd talk about the obstacles that they've run into or the time issues or whatever. And so at that point is when I started doing the one-on-one and started helping walk people a little bit more closely through the process to help them make sure that the book gets done. So that's kind of what motivated the Launchpad publishers and the self-publishing one-on-one course. And now I'm just it's a blessing to be able to help as many people as possible to get their stories told. So.
How do you define self-publishing? Because I know a lot of people they hear that term and they're under the impression that yeah, self-publishing, that's where people go that can't get it published any other way. But I don't think that's true anymore. How do you define self-publishing, and how is it different from hybrid or traditional publishing?
Yeah, great question. So, first of all, times have changed with the self-publishing. It's not back in the older days, a few years ago. The self-publishing would mean you write a book, you go down to the copy store, you have a bunch of copies printed up, you throw them in the trunk, and you go out and sell them. And that's with technology and systems have changed. We don't have to do that anymore. The creation of like KDP, for example, which you mentioned, is a print on demand. So, now I can publish a book or self-publish a book, and I don't ever have to actually order a box of them and keep in the garage to sell if I don't want to. I can lead everybody to Amazon or to other sites to order those. The difference now between traditional publishing and self-publishing, and then we'll talk a little bit about hybrid. You know, traditional publishing, I think, is an honor, right? If you can submit a manuscript and it goes to an agent and then to some publishing companies, and they try to find somebody that will be willing to take that and offer you an advance and then give you a commission on those sales, royalties on those. That seems like an honor to be one of those chosen, that's chosen for that. But the problem is, if you have a story or message or some life experience you want to share that could impact lives or inspire people or just make somebody laugh, I personally wouldn't want to put that in the hands of someone that has to look at thousands of manuscripts a year. And the odds of getting picked is very, very low due to the volume of manuscripts that they get. And so if I have a message that's important to me that I want to share, I don't want that being blocked by someone who doesn't know me, doesn't know my message, and doesn't think that message is important. So traditional publishing, I think, has some benefits. A little ego thing, right? To say you're traditionally published, but even with that, though, you lose most times. You lose control of your book. You lose control of your content. You get lower royalties than a self-publishing book. So yes, you can say you were traditionally published, and for those who have some ego about that, that's a big deal, right? But in reality, there's the benefits of that to self-publishing in my eyes and my perspective and experience. It's just not worth it. But hey, if somebody wants to go that direction to traditional publishing, I always say, great, self-publish, sell some books, and then go try to get it traditionally published, because then you could at least say, hey, my book's been out there for a year. I've sold this many copies. I've got this community built, and then that would help motivate them to maybe do that. Now, self-publishing, like I said a minute ago, is, with KDP, you can publish your book. You keep full rights to your book. You control your royalties based to a certain extent. You get to control the pricing 100%. So there's so many advantages to being able to keep the control of that book by self-publishing. Now, hybrid. Not a big fan. So that's, and I say that even though sometimes people say that I kind of fall into that category, but here's the difference. With hybrid, you're paying a company to make your book available. So it's not a traditional, so they're not going through thousands of manuscripts and picking one of out of 1,000 or whatever. Traditional or hybrid will take almost anybody, but they're going to charge you 10, 15,000. Sometimes, there's lots of different companies out there that charge lots of different amounts. And they may even help with some of the things like editing or formatting. And honestly, most of the time, they'll even charge on top of the initial fee to do that. And then they make the book available, and they're going to keep some of the royalties, which is interesting because now you still have to market your book. It's not like a traditional publishing where they're going to put you on the road doing signings and get you on the talk shows and all that, because they want to sell the book so they can make some money. Hybrid says, hey, we'll help you publish it, and you give us a bunch of money and we'll make it available, but you still need to go market your book. So traditional publishing and self-publishing and hybrid, and for 12 years, I guess, 13 years, I've said self-publishing is definitely the way to go.
So what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you hear about, especially from brand new authors, about self-publishing?
So I'm gonna self-publish my book and put it on Amazon, and it's gonna sell millions. So the reality is, so that's one. The reality is that with any business, with any product, any service, or any book, you have to tell the people that it's available. You have to market. Now, look, there's different reasons to self-publish, right? I'm working with a guy right now. He says, look, I don't care if I ever sell a book, because I'm doing this for my legacy. I want this book to pass down to my kids and my grandkids so they can know my story and kind of my life and some things I went through. He said, hey, look, if I sell some, great, but my number one goal is I want this to be part of my legacy. And I thought, great. So he doesn't have to really, has no desire to go out and market his book, right? Doesn't care if he sells 1 million. But a lot of people have this idea that I'm gonna publish this book and then I'm gonna sit on the couch and watch the money roll in. And unfortunately, that's not exactly how that works. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions is I'll make it available and then build it and they will come. That is not always true. So
Yeah.
And we know, and I know, we've been doing this a long time. We know. Unfortunately, we wish that was the way it was, right? We wish that was the case, but unfortunately, it's not. And, there's the other misconception, too, is I think sometimes, and you mentioned this, I think, in the beginning, was some people think this is so hard. Like, I've got this massive story or life experience that could impact others, but it's too hard. Like, it's going to take too much time, and there's so much to it. And it could be overwhelming for them to start the process. But the reality is, once you have somebody like yourself or myself that's been doing this for a minute, we can actually break that down. It's not as hard as you think. It's pretty simple as long as you can follow some simple steps. So anybody that has a message should be able to do this.
So speaking of that, then who would be your ideal client? If someone wanted to publish a book with you, who's your ideal author client?
Good question. So, well, as a client, I work with a lot of pastors because they're easy, right? They do messages every week. They know how to present their outlines and record their messages and all that. So the ideal for as a business would be obviously pastors, but honestly, it's anybody that has a message, a story, or some life experience. And I am so blessed. I've had a chance to work with so many people from different walks of life, from entrepreneurs to single moms, to women who have come out of some really tough times domestically and other things that want to share their story with other women. Um, there's just such a children's books, and just recently worked with a gentleman who has been in the ministry. He's a pastor, a retired pastor, but for 50 years. Um,
Wow.
and I have to be honest, one of my favorites is working with a gentleman who's 92 years old. He was a reporter, and he was on the campaign trail with John F. Kennedy. Um, so some of the stories that I get to hear during this process of working with him, it's unbelievable. Some of the things he's been through. So my ideal client really is just anybody that has a story or a message to share.
Let me know when you publish that one. I'd like to read that.
It's so many good stories, so many neat things from him growing up. Obviously, a few years before I was around. So, but it's some great stories in there.
Great. Yeah, I'd like to read that. That's cool. Get him on my podcast now.
There you go.
Why
It's
do you, why
good.
do you use KDP? Because I know there's other platforms out there. So why KDP? Why Amazon?
So the simple answer is because that's what I know. but I've been they've been so good to me, and I've watched them over the last over 10 years how they have grown and offered. They didn't even have hardback back when we first started, and it was actually a different name. It wasn't even KDP at that time. It was something Create Space or something. I don't remember. It's been years ago, but then turned into KDP. But I've been there, and they haven't made it difficult. The changes that they've made was to benefit the authors and the writers. So I just stuck with them because it's what I know. Now I have looked at other sites and helped other clients venture into some of those, but I wasn't familiar. But it's like a family member, and I'm loyal. It's like, hey, if it works, don't change it. If it's not broke, don't fix it, kind of thing. But again, and I've had so many new authors go through this, right? It's so simple that almost anybody who wants to learn to do this could do it. Even in KDP, when you start the process of getting in and playing around to upload a book, it's literally 3 stages. It has it broke down, and it'll walk you through. This is stage 1. You just fill in the blanks. You hit save. You go to the next stage, and then we walk through and fill in the blanks. And so because of that simplicity, and again, not everybody, but a lot of the people I work with are very newbies with technology and all this. So it's the easiest platform that I found to show others.
So can you walk us through that process? What's the typical progress with someone who's struggling to write their book?
Yeah, so the ones that I've worked with personally and how I work with them, one of the biggest challenges, as I mentioned, I would run across people who had not finished, and normally that was because of either 2 things. Either one, they didn't have the time to sit down and write it or type out their book, or number 2, they just ran into obstacles that they didn't know how to overcome, like editing or illustrations, or okay, it's edited, but what do I do now? How do I format it to make it look like a book, and all these things. So with my clients and how I do it now to overcome the writing and typing issue, I would say, okay, let's do recorded calls, or now we have voice recorders on all of our smartphones, but it started off as recorded weekly calls. But now um, I have a client just make a list of things they want to include in the book. And this is also could be one of the hindrances. They're like, well, I don't know how to make the list. I don't know what to write down. And so I have to guide them through the process. Okay, uh, just write down 10 things you'd like to talk about in your book. And then I have them go to the smartphone and start voice recording stories and ideas and things about those topics. And so anybody that's listening can do this process. If you have a message or something you want to share, don't wait until you think it's perfect before you start. Like, oh, I have to have the perfect outline. I have to make sure everything is included on my list. Don't do that. Just start recording or typing if you're a typer, because you have to get it out of your head before you can do anything else with it. And that's one of the biggest obstacles with people to get the book done, is they just don't want to take the time or have the time or think they have the time to sit down and get it out of their head. So when you start using voice recording on your phone, now you can do that anywhere. You're in the car, you're out for a walk, you're at work. Just don't tell the boss. I'm just kidding. But you could voice record your story anywhere, right? And just start talking. And once you get all that out, then, transcribing that and then send to an editor, let them edit that and start cleaning it up and go back and forth until you feel like you've got everything included in that process that you want. A lot of my clients, it'll be multiple back and forth, right? Because again, in the beginning, it's just talking and getting everything out. We clean it up later. And that's why I always say, don't hesitate. Don't refrain from telling stories. If you don't want that story in there, we'll take it out. Or you may say, I forgot to tell the story about this, or I forgot to add that point. Great. Through the editing process, you can clean all that up. Once all that's done, then you format it to look like a book, whatever size the client wants. Once that's all formatted and looks pretty, then it goes to the public. Cover design's done, and then publishing. So I think that's, hopefully I answered your question and got all the steps in there for you.
You mentioned editing, and trust me, I know how important that is, because my first book was pretty much done just the way you said. I sat down and basically told all of the network marketing horror stories that I had experienced and just wrote them down as they came to me. And then I sent it to my editor, who actually took all of that and turned it into a book because it was a mess. Otherwise, it was just disjointed stories one after the other. So do you help with the editing? Do you do that, or do you have an editor you send it to, or how does that work?
Yeah, I do. I have a small team that I've worked with for several years that help with all this. But it's funny you say that, because one of our first one-on-one clients was Dave Jorn, who coached the Arkansas Razorback baseball pitching coach for them for 12 years, I think. But it's funny because he had all these stories of just years and years and years of being on the road with these kids, and all the funny stuff and serious stuff that's happened through that process. And so we just had him tell stories for hours and hours and hours. And so it did not look like a book, right? It's just a ton of content. And so, yes, what we would do is have to go back through and organize that into the different time periods and different seasons of life, and then try to clean that up to make it look like a book, just like your editor did with yours, I'm sure. So, yeah, I do a little bit of that when it comes to the flow. I help with that. And a lot of that's done even when we're having our one-on-ones or catching up to kind of see where the process is. I help a lot with that, but definitely not. I'm not a full-time editor. You don't want me doing that by any means. I let the professionals handle that, but I do have people to help.
That's good, because I we're friends now, and I tell her all the time, it's like, yeah, that bestseller status, that's all you, girl.
Amen. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I promise you, like I said, I'm no John Grisham and no English major. So trust me, I'm much better about the helping and coaching and getting people to get their books published, besides, me trying to do editing and stuff. They don't want that.
Do you help with anything else, like the formatting or cover design, ISBNs, marketing? I know you mentioned marketing. Hybrid publishers don't market. Do you help with any
Yeah,
of that?
so we do. So with our clients, we do it all up until the publishing, and then we advise on the launch, which we can talk about. But so once we work with clients, we'll make sure the editing's done. We format it into the book size that they want. We're going to do a professional book cover that they approve. So everything, all this whole process, the author is signing off on. So again, kind of going back to, we talked about traditional, once you sign that contract, they're going to do what they want, what they feel best to sell your book. with self-publishing, you keep control, and with me, I make sure that my authors are 100% satisfied. Matter of fact, I had a situation here about a month ago. Somebody that we had helped, we published, and everything was fine, and I just touched base with him for the holidays, and he brought up that there was an not an issue, something he wasn't happy with. And now this book has already been published and everything. And I was like, well, ask what was that? Because we need to know, right? We want to make sure we fix it. And so it was just a marginal thing. He liked one size of margin versus the other. No problem. So we went back and reformatted the entire book for him, because customer service to me is one of the most important things that everybody I work with, I want them 100% satisfied. So we went back, reformatted, everything else was fine, covered and everything, but we do it all until it's self-published. The other thing that's different from what I do versus some other hybrid companies and things like that, we help people establish the publishing account, and it's their account. So when we're done helping that client, we step back and let them, they take ownership of that. So the royalties go to them. We don't, at this point, we don't have to any other obligation beyond helping them get to that point of being a published author. Everything belongs to them, total control.
Yes, may I point that out? So I used a hybrid publisher for my second book, and I will not name them because that's probably not right, but I was absolutely just blown away when I went in and tried to make a change to my author page on Amazon and found out that I don't own that, they do. Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
why in future all of my books will be self-published, because I just, after all of their promises that I owned everything was mine, I discovered not everything. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
that's a big deal. I mean, that's a huge deal. And some of our clients too, once we're done with the first book, and I think me and you have talked about this before, but once we're done with the first one, the way we do this, we kind of teach our client how to do it along the way, so that in the end, it's their account and they have their book published. If they want to do multiple books, a lot of the clients feel capable to be able to go ahead and do the other books on their own. Now, I do have a lot of clients that still don't have time or patience for it. They still want us to do it, and that's perfect. I love helping, and we will. But we see both sides of that. We have people who continue to go on and publish multiple books on their own, and when they run into a roadblock or have a question, they just shoot me a message, which I'm more than happy to help with.
so what's the one thing that you wish every author knew before they decided to self-publish? I mean, because there's a long list. After talking to you, I'm kind of dismayed that I didn't just go that route from the beginning, but
Oh wow, I think a couple of things. The total control, right? Like we just mentioned. I think just knowing how important that is and going this direction, and two, knowing that things have changed and you don't have to buy hundreds of books, which sometimes hybrids actually, part of their pricing, or they say as part of their pricing, is built in. They want to send you hundreds of books, and with self-publishing now, we don't. That's not a thing. You don't have to do that unless you just want to. And so I think that's really important to know that that you control the book, you keep control, you control the royalties and the pricing, uh, pretty much. You you don't have to buy hundreds and thousands of books to keep in the garage and try to peddle or sell. So unless you want to, and then that's fine. There's ways to do that, but I think that's a big deal. And another thing is, if you have a message, something that's happened to you, and or again, it could be just a funny kids book or whatever you want to share. I think that just going into this knowing that your message is worthy, and if it's important to you, you should publish a book, because there's, I don't know how many millions of billions of people in the world now, but if it's important to you, there's the odds are that's important to somebody else out there. And if you can make somebody laugh, inspire somebody, share something that's going to change somebody's mind about something or whatever, I just say go into this knowing that you can do it. It's easy. We'll make it easy, and just I encourage you to do it.
well, I'm going to speak a little bit here from my own experience because I have a question for you. So I want people to understand the importance of this. My first book hit bestseller on Amazon. I did all the marketing and everything myself. The company I worked with offered, and I was like, no, I'm pretty good at this. Okay, so I'm not going to pay you to do something that I'm probably actually better at than you are.
Hmm.
And so it was legit number one. The second one, they decided they were going to launch it after I'd already told them that I can't do it that week. I'm hosting a week-long summit. They launched it anyway. So I was in no way involved in any of that first week in marketing. It theoretically hit number one, like within the very first day. This is when I found out that you can absolutely manipulate things on Amazon so that you hit bestseller, but maybe it's in a category that nobody else reads, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really count. It's not, it's just, it's yeah, it does not equate to sales. The first book
Hmm.
sold, the second one didn't, and I think that had a lot to do with it. How do you help authors think about positioning their book so that it's in the right categories, it's ready to be discovered and sold? How do you work with them on all that?
So that's a good question, and it's funny because I've seen a lot of systems out there that want to hijack the ability to get number one just for the credibility of saying that they were number one in the lowest category, that's most odd category that they could possibly put their book in. So like you said, because nobody else is buying books in that category, so you can sell minimum and hit number one for a period of time. So to be honest, that number one status means nothing to me personally, because it goes back to, like you said, unless it equates or equals money or revenue. If that's the goal, is to create revenue from the sales, then that is more important. If it hits number one, great. If it doesn't, that's not the big deal to me. So when it comes to categories, I think it's you need to be very strategic about putting your book into the category and the categories that you're going to want to market that book for. Again, if you're not going to market the book, it doesn't matter, right? But if you're going to market the book and do this as long term, you don't want to put your gardening book into the children's whatever story time books, right? Because that's not where people who are interested in gardening and the community, hopefully, that you're going to build around this, that's not where they go to look for gardening books. But also knowing how to and some people write some look, I just said write whatever you want, okay? But if there's strategy, if you're writing books to have another source of income, then it gets a little different, because now we talk about going to which niche you're going to write in and being very specific, not a broad niche. And if you're doing that, then it goes back to the category. It's the same thing. So if I'm a gardener and I'm raising big green tomatoes as my specialty, which is not, by the way, I don't have a green thumb, but if that was the specialty, then I would want to make sure to go ahead and go to those categories, not just gardening. That's pretty broad, but then I would try to niche that down to the very big green tomatoes, or green tomatoes, or how to grow green tomatoes. Because when people are the community I'm building and my specialty, I want people to search for that. So that's very important. So yeah, there's some thinking that goes into that. But again, it goes back to why you're writing the book, and what fiction or nonfiction. So there's a lot of discussions we have over categories as we're preparing to publish.
So yeah, I discovered that was a huge thing. And you do not control that if you work with a hybrid or even a regular, you don't control any of that. So
Mm-mm.
as I found out too late. You also don't control things like when they decide to launch. Okay? Even though you told them, hello, week-long summit, don't do that now. I'm kind of preoccupied. And then yeah, after the summit was over and everything, I kind of lost all of that post-launch momentum. So do you have some strategies or
Hmm.
some tools or things that you use to help with launch planning and that post-launch, keep it going?
Absolutely. So first of all, I love a good launch party. Okay, so we've kind of built this little model for that. Really, And it depends if you're going to do an online launch or like a local launch. So I'll kind of give you an example. We've had 3, 4 or 5, I think up to 5 now, local launches, 3 that I was really active in and participated in. And so if you have a book coming out, what I always recommend is first, don't tell anybody where it's going to be available. Okay. So I use this launch for our clients. I use this opportunity so that they can recoup any money they spent during the process, whether it's working with me or hiring editors on their own or hiring people to do the things that they need to do to get their book self-published, because not everybody can do all the illustrations and everything themselves, right? So whatever money they have to invest in that, I always say use your launch weekend and launch party to recoup that money. So then everything from there on and out is profit, right? So one of the first things is don't tell everybody where it's going to be available. Just tell them your book's coming up, and part of the marketing kind of leading up to that. Then for those who want to do a local launch, I always say, get you a place, get some finger foods, invite family, friends, everybody online that you can invite that might want to come. And then set that time, and about an hour and a half is a good time frame for that, and hour and a half to 2 hours max. And then, and if you want, I'll show you. This is the key to a good launch party. Let me tell you how this works. Okay, so what we would do is we would have an MC, and I was able to do that 3 different times, and I'll use that very loosely. I'm not a professional MC, but what I would do is we'd have everybody sit down. We'd have 2 tables set up, books on one table, right, covered up so nobody could have access to them yet. And then we have another table set up where the author would eventually sit and sign books. We would welcome everybody to the launch party, and we would MC would get up, welcome everybody, call the author up, ask a couple questions. We would sit there, hey, what inspired the book? What's the big takeaway? What would you like people to walk away with? Then we would have 2 volunteers, people who maybe pre-read the book, come up and speak on behalf of the author. Oh yeah, Sally's awesome, or yeah, Mark's great, or whatever. And then we'd bring the author back up one more time for a short reading, a paragraph, a chapter, whatever they want. The MC would then, I'm telling you, this is the model, y'all. We figured it out. We messed up a couple times. We figured out the model. Then after that, MC says, hey, thank you all so much for being here. The author goes to the table where they're going to sit and sign books. Some of the other help takes the sheets off of the books. Now they're available. We have people with Square or however cash, or it depends on how they want to sell them. Then the MC would say, if you would like, books are now available here to purchase. If you want them signed, go to this table over here, which is on the opposite side of the room, by the way. So it keeps congestion down. That's one of the biggest lessons we learned the first time. You don't sell and sign at the same time because it takes forever to get through your line. So we send people over there. That little model, we had somebody sell 200 and some odd books on one, and then of course now Dave Jordan has a bigger crowd, so he sold 400 or 500 books on his. So we have some in betweens there. But what's kind of cool about that, again, if you're going to do a local launch, everything, you don't mention Amazon, right? Because you want people to come there, and here's why. Remember I mentioned earlier, you don't have to order books and keep them in the garage if you don't want to. But for a launch party, you can order author copies, which are way cheaper than going and buying retail. Just for example, through KDP, an author copy of a book, say 150 to 200 pages, black and white, fiction, nonfiction book. It could be a 5.5 by 8.5 or 6 by 9, but the average price on that author copy is under $3, $2.50, $3 a piece plus shipping. Well, when you do a launch party, I mean, depending on the book, of course, and your community, but you could sell those for 15, 20, 25 bucks, depends on the book and the community. And so that increases that profit margin initially and allows you to make back and recoup the money you've invested to kind of go through this process of getting something done. So I love a good launch party. One plus, you're getting to celebrate with somebody, something amazing, right? Family and friends and neighbors and everybody's there and just celebrating this big accomplishment of somebody writing and publishing a book. So it's a lot of fun for a local launch. And then online launch is real similar. Just leading up to, hey, I'm going to have a Zoom or have a launch Zoom or some kind of live that you're going to do. Don't mention Amazon at that point until you do your launch web party. Invite everybody on there at one time, and then then release your link that you want them to go to Amazon. This also creates hopefully a bunch of sales at one time, so that you can again recoup some of the expenses you've spent. Hope that makes sense and helps some. So, and I'll follow up if you have any other questions on any of that.
Oh no, that explains it perfectly. Yeah, I've that was part of what was missing, I think, for the second book. I didn't have time to do a launch party. It's like, no, I'm busy. Okay. Just, well, here it is.
Oh yeah, wish they'd have waited for you.
It's okay. It taught me some valuable lessons, like reaching out to Mark. I know three authors that have used you, so yeah, and they all said the same thing. Just go talk to Mark. Self-publishing is not what you think it is anymore. I had no experience. I came up in that. I remember Create Space because my first book came out in
Yeah.
2016. So
Yeah.
KDP was not really yet a thing, and self-publishing still carried that stigma of, yeah, you're not really a publisher, you're not really a published book, so yeah, whatever. And yeah, so after talking to them, I was like, what am I doing? Okay, I'm me of all the people with the control issues that I have, letting somebody else control everything for me. Why am I not doing this? So you gonna MC my
Lesson
launch
learned.
party?
Lesson learned, though, right? So that's good. And then now all the people you'll share this with, they'll all learn too. So that's really good. I hope we can change some lives through all this. Really,
Oh, I'm positive we can. Are you gonna MC my launch party
absolutely.
for the
I would
fourth one?
love to.
Sweet.
Let's go. I'm ready. I love it. Hey, I'm telling you, just being in that environment, to be able to stand back and watch. And I post some pictures on social media for those who don't know me. Follow me and check them out and scroll back through to some of the launch parties. But it's neat because I get to stand back and watch these family members go up to their sons, their daughters, their cousins, or whoever, and just hug them and say, "I'm so proud of you. This is so cool." To watch all that interaction. Yeah, absolutely. I'll be there. I love a good launch party.
Now, I know you said it doesn't matter to you if your authors make number one,
Mm-hmm.
unless that's really important to them.
Excuse me. Mm-hmm.
So, how exactly do you measure success for your authors?
That is a great question, and it really just depends on the author. My success for me is that they get their book done, that they're completely 100% satisfied, and that they accomplish the goal that they're wanting to accomplish with that. So, for example, I mentioned earlier this gentleman who's writing it for his legacy. The 92-year-old, he's not looking to make $1 million and sell books. He's wanting to get this done and pass down to his kids too. So if they get it done and they get copies and start giving to their family, and they're like, man, this is what I wanted to do. Well, that's success for me. Now, if somebody who wants to do a launch party and their goal is to make some money out of this deal and not only recoup but make profit and then continue to sell the book to make profit, and as I communicate with them, and we obviously have a relationship, and I watch them do that, and I hear the stories. Hey, I went to the speaking gig and sold 75 to 100 copies, and blah blah, and then they're happy. That's success for me. So, I guess the long answer to your short question there is that whatever makes them happy and their definition of success is if they can reach that, if I can help them reach that, then I'm good.
Do you have a story or a project that, a success story that you're especially proud of?
Oh man, there's so many. I've just been blessed to work with so many cool people over the years. One of the first, wow, 2012. So I guess probably one of the first classes. Sometimes in the first year or two of doing this, I met a gentleman locally at one of the classes, and he went on to write. He's now about to publish his third book. And I think you probably know this gentleman. His name is Douglas Myrick.
Oh, I know Douglas.
If you don't follow Douglas on Facebook, please do that. He's an incredible person. First of all, great heart, and now just lost 122 pounds, I think, in the last a little bit over a year. And his next book's going to talk about that. So I'm super excited. But just to build this relationship, this friend, and have him be able to live out his dreams of writing and publishing a book. And he's been too kind online for me as a supporter, and just it's just that relationship has just been really good, and to watch what he's done and his success. His second book hit a #1 status. Again, that's what he wanted to do. He did it, and it was great. I'm happy for him and proud of him. But anyway, so that there's been a lot of stories, or a lot of people I've had a chance to work with that's being able to publish their book. One other one that came from I think the first class I did in 2012, and her name was Nicole Donahoe, and she lives local now. I think she had moved in and moved back to Northwest Arkansas. She had went with a hybrid publisher before the class. After the class, because this was a self-publishing class that I was just taught, she went on to not only self-publish more books. I don't know how many she's done now. It's multiple, but she also helps people do the same. And so not only I was able to hopefully make an impact with her and help her, but through her, she's been able to help so many other people too. And so that's just been so rewarding. She came to an event here recently, and we got to catch up, and it's just neat to, after all these years, again, now we're 13 years out, and she's still out there writing and publishing and helping kids do that too. So anyway, some cool stories.
Yeah, I know Douglas. He's pretty amazing. He's been on my podcast actually himself. So I'm waiting for him to get ready with the next book. I promised him I'd have him on again when the next book published.
Absolutely. One of the most genuine, good people that you'll ever meet. So good dude.
It's awesome. Okay, so I have a question. This is kind of maybe a little self-serving, but okay, so I'm getting ready to give you my fourth one. And I have several others buzzing around in my head. What trends are you watching in indie publishing right now? What do I need to be preparing for?
Hey, great question. Let me tell you one of the biggest things. I think that as new authors begin to self-publish, or even older people who have other books already out and publishing new books, is audiobooks, and make sure we're doing Kindle versions, right? Because print books are great. I love a good print book. I've got one here next to me that I've carried with me, and I read when I have a few minutes here and there. So I love a good book in my hand. But the reality is, as we continue to do this, Kindle, which has been a big deal already, but audiobooks too. Audible. I personally have over 400 titles on my Audible. I've been doing that for many years too. I love a good audiobook. Even published a couple on Audible before. So I say keep that in mind as you publish yours, and as other people begin to publish their books, is making sure you're not just doing print. And the great thing about KDP is, you can do hardback, softback, and Kindle version. And they've made it even easier in the last year to do all three of those versus what it was, several years ago. So it has become super easy to get those three models out. And what a lot of people don't know is Amazon has another company called acx.com, and it's kind of like a KDP, but it's for audiobooks. And it's a really simple process to use. Kind of like, I say simple because I've been doing it for over 10 years, but it is pretty simple. And you can go on there. Once you publish your book on KDP, you can go to ACX, and you can hire narrators, find narrators to do your audiobooks. And those books are distributed kind of like KDP distributes on Amazon. The ACX distributes on iTunes and Audible and Amazon and all the other neat sites. So the trends, again, long answer to your question here, but things to be thinking about as we go into this publishing in the future is always all the formats you can publish in, especially audio versions.
I did not know that it was that easy to do audio. None of my books are audio. They're all hardback, softback, and digital. But I never thought about audio, for one thing, because I don't think I would make a good narrator. And I'm like, how would I find someone to do that?
So funny story. The reason why I ran into this audio deal is because I at one season of life I was wanting to listen to and I was already on Audible listening to books, but I was a client, and I wanted to listen to the old sermons from revival days from like early years, right? So I would go on Audible and look for these books, and on Audible you can hit sample and listen to the narrator's voice. And that's important to me because I don't want to listen to hours and hours of voice that just drives me crazy, right? So I couldn't find any voices reading those books that I really like. So I compiled, they're all public domain. So I compiled those sermons, published them on KDP, then went to ACX, found listed it. Narrators started auditioning for that position. I found the narrators that I like to listen to for hours at a time, hired them to narrate the books that I just published that I wanted to listen to, and then when they become an Audible, I would go on there and listen to the book that I just published because it was the narrator that I wanted. So definitely a selfish motivation to publish those books, but it all worked out, and that's how easy of a process it was.
So I guess the smartest publishing strategy, because Amazon KDP is print on demand, which is amazing. It's I didn't know you could do that with books at first. That's awesome. Print on demand. I have t-shirt stores and stuff that are print on demand. So when I discovered you could do it for books too, I was like, oh my gosh.
Isn't that amazing?
Why not?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
So print on demand with KDP, and then both hardback, softback, and Kindle, which I admit I resisted Kindle because I'm like you. I like to open my book and smell the,
Yep.
But now I have as many on my Kindle as I do in my bookshelf. So,
Mm-hmm.
and now Audible. So all four. Okay.
Absolutely.
Best publishing strategy, all four formats. Use them.
Yes,
How do you
definitely.
see self-publishing evolving like over the next few years?
So, I mean, even over the last few years, as I mentioned a minute ago, like KDP has come a long way because, from Create Space or whatever back in the day and now, but then, adding hardback was really neat here recently, and making it easier for the Kindle in all three formats. And then, of course, again, Amazon has the audio book. But I think that the biggest movement in self-publishing will be, people will realize, one, how easy it is, and two, that if people have a message or a story to share, whether that be a fiction story, that anybody can do that. And I think that's more people are going to learn that, and more books are going to be published. And look, you can't, my opinion, I want everybody to publish a book, right? So I think it's great. The more books, the better. But I think as we continue to grow over the years, I'm looking forward to see how technology helps us in the upcoming years in self-publishing. Now, of course, AI is a big deal, and then there's a lot of different feelings about AI when it comes to self-publishing books and using AI to write books, or for illustrations, and all kinds of discussions that people can have. Some are real staunch of like, hey, no, you're not a writer if you use AI, and some are like, you're crazy if you don't use AI to help publish more books. And look, I don't have an opinion on any of that at this point, but I think with technology and AI, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the self-publishing world continues to grow, and I think as it does, I think it's going to be better for us. I think it's going to be good.
I would not have my first book out there if it weren't for one piece of advice that I received from someone I met at a networking event. I was trying to write because I'd always dreamed of being a published author, and I was trying to write all different kinds of things. And he asked me how it was going. He knew I was writing, and it's not. And he said, stop trying to write whatever it is, and write what you know. And
Mm.
at that time, I was, deep in network marketing. I said, this is all I know. This is what I do. This is all I know. And there's thousands of network marketing books out there. And he's like, yes, but none of them are yours.
Mm.
And that little piece of
Good.
advice was like, you're right, because I'm not coming out here from the aspect of, oh, this is wonderful and y'all should try it. I was like, well, yeah, this can be wonderful, but there's a lot of things you really need to know first. So if it weren't for him, I would never have written that book.
Mm.
If you had one big piece of advice that you could give to someone who's been thinking about writing their book, or struggling with getting it finished, what would you tell them?
So I would say know thyself. either know yourself, to either you're going to be able to schedule time to get this done if that's a desire you have. You're disciplined enough to get it scheduled, put it on the calendar every day, every week. I'm going to work on this and I'm going to get it done. Or know thyself and know that you're not disciplined, and get a coach to walk you through the process. Look, there is nothing wrong with coaches, right? some of the most successful people in the world and some of the most successful businesses in the world hire coaches to help with areas that they may be weak in or need some new insight or perspective in, right? And so coaching is it's been around for many years, and it's going to continue to be around, because what that is hiring somebody to kind of hold you accountable, but also sometimes need to walk you through the process and hand by hand to do that. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's a great way to get something done. And so I say that it's funny, but I said know thyself. Just know which direction you're going to want. If you're going to get this book done and you know that you can, then great, get it done. If you know that you've been struggling and you're not 100% sure you're going to be able to turn that around, then just hire somebody to hold you accountable. And I say hire because I think when you have money invested, it's more motivating than you have your Aunt Sally's going to call you once a week and ask you, if you're doing something, which is great. That's always good too, right? But if you invest money, the odds of you following through, and no matter what that amount of money looks like, if it's a great way to hold yourself accountable. And look, even if you're going to do it on your own, I heard Tim Ferriss one time in a podcast talking about how he had a goal that he wanted to hit, and what he did, and he was working on his own to get this done, but he made an arrangement, and there's a site you can do this on, where basically if you don't get it done by the certain time period, then you have to donate so much money to a certain charity, or there's some kind of consequence that you have to do. Maybe even using social media to help. If you don't want to be embarrassed, right, you could say, hey, I'm going to get this done. I want y'all to hold me accountable. And so if you're kind of doing that on your own without a coach, there's things you can do to encourage you to stay on track and make sure you finish. But listen, just do it. Like, just get your book out. Everybody should write and publish one. And don't think, well, I went through this and it was, I overcame it, but I'm not sure anybody else would want to read that. And listen, don't take that chance. If you can impact a life, just tell your story, publish your book, and let everything else kind of fall in place as it may. So.
What's the biggest mistake that you see first-time self-publishers make?
Well, I mean, the delay, I think, is one of the biggest mistakes, is just not having somebody to encourage them if they're not disciplined to do it. That's a big one. And continue to put it off and put it off. And now look, there's legitimate reasons to put things off, right? I had a client that we started working together, and a few months in, she had health issues, and look, it was a break on what we did, because she needed time to focus on her health and her family and things like that. So there's legitimate reasons to put things off. But I think that's important, is to making sure you just set the time and get it done. The other mistake is, so when you're going to hire people to help you overcome obstacles, whether that be editing or formatting or cover design, don't hire the first person that you come in contact with, right? So, for example, there's some great freelancer sites I've used for years online, part of the process of getting this stuff done. And in one of my recent classes, I was teaching self-publishing local, and one of the tips I give is, if you have a cover that needs to be designed, interview, message people, talk to them, have them send portfolios, find out that they do the style that you like. But then also, sometimes I'll hire 2 or 3 people to do the same job, just because I want to get different takes on what the finished product. So a mistake is just, they'll find the first person, don't research the cost, don't they just jump right in and hire somebody to do something. So take your time when you're hiring freelancers. Build some rapport and communicate before you hire somebody. That's huge.
So if after all of this, if somebody finally has decided that maybe it's not as hard as they've been making it, and maybe it's time to finally get their story out there, how do they reach you?
Yeah, so great question. So it's super easy. markhoward.today. So that's my website. I got my social media contacts on there. I've got, look, I did this because of this conversation today. You inspired me, but I have a short video course and PDF bundle that I marked it down as cheap as possible, $27. It walks people through how to actually do what we're talking about today. If they just need a little bit of guidance there, just they want to see the on camera what I'm doing and flipping through things. But hey, if you need that coaching and you you want me to walk you through to help, love to meet you and talk about it. Again, markhoward.today, my contacts on there, email. I love to visit with anybody who wants to write and publish a book, anything I can do to assist. And I think you know that just from our conversations we've had. And I love to serve. So
You've heard all the stories. You've heard about Douglas. You heard about the 93-year-old gentleman. You heard about the woman with the health issues and sharing her story. And this is exactly why conversations like this matter. Okay, writing a book, it doesn't have to feel mysterious or intimidating or out of reach. And it definitely doesn't require giving your power away to the wrong people.
yes, yes.
So, but if today's conversation with Mark helped you see self-publishing a little differently, it definitely did me. Or maybe it gave you some clarity around what's actually possible with Amazon and KDP, then let's take this as your nudge, okay? You don't have to know everything to get started. You just have to be willing to start and get the right support along the way, and that's why we have Mark here today. So if this episode resonated with you, please make sure you share it with a friend who's been saying, one day I'm going to write a book. And if you haven't already, write your book and then follow the podcast so you don't miss future conversations like this one. And as always, thank you for being part of the Rebel Tribe. This is where we build confidence and clarity and momentum without all the smoke and mirrors. So until next time, keep trusting your voice and share your story. And Mark, I really appreciate you being here today. Thank you so
Honor
much.
to be here. Thank you. Appreciate the time.